June 1st is, I don't know that that's necessarily the best thing because not all students are going to be at that same level.
It sounds to me like part of what you're saying is the test might be reliable,
Right.
but it's not realistic to expect everybody to.
Right. For where we are now, the test can get there, but
Can
I
be
don't
an
know if that's what
indication.
we need to be.
But RTI says maybe there are other indications
Yes.
that need to be taken into account. Thank you.
I have another question. Paige, when do you think your ideas of utilizing like webcams in classrooms, do you think that's feasible? I mean, do you think it would happen within the next 10 years? And how would that even work? Would you have to put everything on a certain website somewhere to say, oh, well, Idaho is teaching British literature this week, this time, this is when the student needs to be online to watch the lecture, or would the lectures all just be recorded in the library that you could access? I mean, what do you think, how would the students ask questions? Don't you think that's important too?
Well, currently what we have in school systems right now is they have, a school in New York is utilizing Cisco webcams, which is the just the brand of webcam, and it broadcasts lectures from other students. And what's kind of nice about that webcam is you can have a dialogue. The student can be typing responses in sort of like an instant messenger format that the teacher is now receiving, and then when there's a question time or a break in the class, the teacher can now look at those responses and or the questions and respond. Okay. And currently in education we have iPads. That's starting to happen where full schools are going textbook free, everything's on iPads, and it's really neat as long as it's implemented correctly. A lot of times in schools they're like, we're going to spend all this money on technology and we're not going to train our teachers to use it. We're not going to set any kind of limits or any sort of restrictions on it, and we're going to just let people go with it. And that doesn't work because you need to have a strategy, you need to have a purpose in order to put it into place. So I could definitely say in the next 10 years we could have webcams because we're starting to move toward that technology. And with technology and apps, Minecraft, the game that is based on building to accomplish tasks, actually has an education version where students use their lessons to then.
Is it alright if I come in here and set my stuff up?
Oh, no, can you wait?
Oh yeah, that's fine. I just didn't know if this
Okay.
is where you're a friend or.
Please shut the door. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. The Minecraft game, it takes educational curriculum tasks, and students now need to solve problems that are related to the subject that they're learning in order to move up in Minecraft. And what's really great about that kind of technology is you get an instant feedback. If you make a mistake or what you're trying to do doesn't work, you know instantly, and you can now build upon that to change your strategies. Whereas without technology, it's not exactly easy to do that.
Well, your answer in your presentation and that answer are really interesting to me because from my perspective, what I see most often in schools is technology being used not to individualize, but to standardize.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that makes me a little nervous about your presentation, not about your presentation, which I thought was great, but about the information, was like, there's a sense in which part of the way we can individualize is by removing the teacher from the process and maybe being more mechanized or using more technology. And it's interesting because I think there are market forces at work that want everybody to buy and so everybody's doing the same thing. And with national curriculum and Common Core state standards, you're talking about technology in really exciting ways, individualized ways that would crush stereotypes. And you're speaking into almost into a void, or I don't know, like a tsunami or something, of standardization that we can make sure that the 11th graders in Boise are studying what the 11th graders in Poughkeepsie are studying. See what I mean?
Yeah.
So your presentation was interesting to me and kind of bothered me in a good way. because what I see, I do see the iPads, but what I see is everybody doing the same thing.
Right.
We're all gonna pull it, right? You pull up the iPad, we're all gonna do the same thing.
And the other thing, the other just practical aspect of that is the iPads are often pulled out and then half of them don't work. So if we look at like how it took 5 minutes, right, to get this to work, that affected just our whole group, but 5 minutes per iPad for 10 that don't work, right? It wastes so much classroom time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just a practical aspect. But the other thing that concerns me about technology, and I'm not anti-technology in classrooms, but especially when we talk about it with boys, and I have 2 girls and 2 boys, children, and my boys are way more into the technology, but I think it isolates them from much human interaction, right? So in our family, that's one of the things that I talk about all the time. Put that away, talk to somebody, right? So if we do that in schools, one of the things that can happen in the classroom is all that social interaction. And I know there's an argument that social interaction happens online, you know, and happens in those interactive games and all that kind of stuff, and they do play against each other, but it still is a different kind of social action, and I think can be isolating. So I worry about that aspect.
We only have time for one more question, and I'm gonna steal it. Because I got to. Paige,
Yes.
back to the issue of stereotypes, gender stereotypes, racial stereotypes, all the research on boys and literacy and things like that. What do you think needs to change in terms of teacher training to prepare us all? What, in other words, you take classes where people tell you this stuff, but no, maybe that doesn't take. What do you think we could do at the teacher training level that could actually make a difference out there in the ways we respond to boys, in the ways we respond to girls, or the gender continuum more?
I would say 3 things. The first is that the training needs to be updated. For example, we're currently in Grand Valley's College of Education. The problem is we're going to graduate next year and all of our training is already obsolete because the world changes so quickly. So teacher training needs to be constantly updated, needs to be constantly reevaluated to make sure that teachers are now fitting the new developments as they come out. Second, teachers should be introduced to the idea of multiple intelligences. Howard Gardner's whole theory of there's 9 different intelligences, and students can have all of them. Students can have all strong, some weak, and there's just a whole spectrum of intelligence. And I think that's something that in traditional teaching standards, it's lecture-based, it's notes, and there's so many other ways to teach, and that needs to be introduced to teachers. And finally, teachers need to be trained to be comfortable with change, because change can be scary sometimes. And I mean, our education system hasn't changed since the economic stability of the Industrial Revolution and the ideas of the Enlightenment. I mean, nothing has changed since then. That's drastic, and so that comes from a fear of change, and we need to stop fearing change so we can try new things and be okay if they